Oh boy, so there's new pirate software drama, and I thought I was done with this. Okay, I was moving on. We're doing the Dr. Disrespect thing. Part 2 is coming out very soon of that, but he's been hit with new allegations of sexual abuse, I guess, emotional abuse, sexual manipulation, financial manipulation, which I will admit does fit a pattern of behavior, but I kind of want to go through here because while obviously pirate software is obviously always going to say, I didn't do it, there were mitigating factors, that doesn't necessarily mean that this person is telling the truth, and this is a good time for this person, if they were clout chasing, to go out and make a statement. And I kind of want to go through line by line, but wow, what a time he must be having. From the WoW drama to my video to Dr. K basically dancing around calling this guy a narcissist to these allegations. It's been quite the time. All bro had to do was shut the fuck up and put the stop killing games in the bag. LyricWulf on Twitter starts out with this. This is June 9th, 2025. When I was 20 years old, Jason Thor Hall, aka Pirate Software, aged 31 at the time, emotionally abused and manipulated me for sexual and financial gain. Thor's actions had a severe impact on my life, causing me to give up being a uni student and a creator. So if you do happen to recognize the name LyricWulf, it's possibly through their music, but weirdly when I was searching for the screenshot that I took of this tweet, what I found was a MIDI file from Bo Burnham's Art is Dead on my computer, and it was by LyricWulf, which I thought was interesting to mention here. But anyways, if you look under this tweet, there's a community note, and it reads just like pirate software propaganda, which makes it a little bit hard because if he didn't do it, he would be giving these excuses, but in cases where he did do it, he's giving the same excuses. So the pinned context, quote unquote, under this tweet is Jason Thor Hall, aka Pirate Software, has already outed this person as a recurring liar. Sound familiar? And these claims have already been debunked before. Sound familiar? All of Lyric's sources are out of context and none of them identify Pirate Software in them. So we'll get into that last part, but this is a common trend with him denying accusations, true or false. He will say, I've already outed this person, I addressed this a long time ago, everything's out of context. That is like the classic Pirate Software party line. So that original tweet by LyricWulf was posted on June 9th, 2025, and Pirate Software's response was on June 10th. However, before we take a look at that response, there's actually an entire website on this person's bio, and it's piratesoftware.sucks, and the first page you're greeted with is /summary. That was actually last edited on June 2nd, 2025, and it has the original tweet on top of it before the tweet even went out. But under that, there is a little description of what this website is. This website details our interactions, how he manipulated me, and how I was coerced into silence. After I was silenced in 2019, I tried to forget about that experience. However, I started to see Thor's resurgence on online platforms. I decided to write a Google Doc about my experience with Thor. At first, I was going to point out his hypocrisy when he accused me of cheating on him when I roleplayed with someone else. Moldavia's fig tree, that beautiful furry man. I documented each conversation, putting together my traumatic experience bit by bit in a way I did not previously comprehend. Over time, it evolved into this website. And then there's a little drop down here. Thor's friend and business partner, Shay, aka River Makes Fish Bones, age 22 at the time, while at first sympathetic to my situation, would ultimately be a willing accomplice to Thor silencing me. So at first, I didn't even know where to fucking start on this gigantic website, okay? There's too much here. But I think the best place to just immediately jump into is just the conversations tab. So we're going to cover all the DMs here, but I will say red flags and things to note is just how absolutely cropped these messages are to an extent where you could potentially paint any narrative that you want to, right? And the other thing is that these appear to be Twitter DMs, but his name is not shown anywhere. So it starts off with a long diatribe of what love bombing is. Basically, love bombing is either a cycle of abuse where you're like abusing someone and then you love bomb them afterwards to make them, stay with you or whatever, trauma bond them. Or it's doing it for the purposes of getting sex or whatever, and then just discarding them later. They state the primary purpose of this article is to contrast with Thor's demeanor in the final conversation, where he attempts to deny any advances towards Lyric. Don't know why we're going by a third-person perspective here. Maybe someone else wrote this. Under that is the message. As far as I knew, we were fooling around and seeing if we were compatible. You've been pushing a lot for a commitment kind of thing, but I have a lot of work stuff going on and not a lot of time, which I think is fair. which is a dynamic that can play out. It's very rare that you're going to have casual sexual relationships and one side doesn't develop some sort of feelings or whatever. I think it's completely fine that at that point you kind of push away and you say, hey, I've got a lot of work stuff going on, I can't commit to this, that's fine. So this statement in a vacuum is not a problem. But essentially they're saying this is their final conversation, and then this tone is a lot different than earlier messages. And that message is posted on October 27th, 2018. So backing up, they post a screenshot from August 28th, 2018. They lead in with, early on, Thor would establish a pattern of emotional dependence seeming to mirror Lyric's desires and emphasize them. Once again, third-person perspective, fucking kill me. But it leads off with this person saying, I was just wondering if you wanted to hop into another call tonight, and if not tonight, then sometime else. Ooh, woo. Wow. Hitting him quick with the ooh, woos, so you can tell this is a established furry communication technique. The absolute Rizzler. Then Thor allegedly responds with, and I'm just going to assume these messages are him from here on out in this video, and obviously that is not a foregone conclusion. These messages could easily be faked, and they are heavily cropped, so keep that in mind. And I might as well take this opportunity to offer this person, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'll have the link on the screen and in the description and as a pinned comment. And on top of that, if you want to reach out to my email, you can do that too. But what I need from you, okay, and I think what everyone needs, but at the very least I can verify it for people, I need you to like scroll through these DMs to make sure that it's not just some random Photoshop pictures, and I need context. So if you're either able to do that on your website or reach out to me, either one, and I will verify it, then go ahead and do that, but like this is not acceptable evidence, right? But he says that yes, every day, like I said, silly. Immediately off this response, when you're communicating like this and you're saying you're going to call this person every single day, that's a level of commitment, no? You're saying, I'm going to call this person every single day. That seems to establish some sort of relationship, a little bit more than friends, at the very least. And then he follows up with, my night stream starts in 20 minutes. If you're awake after it, we should call. Which immediately blares the sirens for me. It sounds like they're planning to fall asleep on call together, and every day, he says. So, interesting. Typically not something you do with someone you're in a casual sexual relationship with, or someone that you're just friends with. Then LyricWulf says, oh, right. And Thor says, but yes, my plan is to be on voice chat with you every day, with a cringe little face. Very interesting. And then it goes to August 29th, 2018, which I'm not sure if that's the next day or if it's just later that night, because the screenshots are so cropped. But Lyric says, you really make my life a ton better. Thor says, you make mine better too. And then he says, on August 30th, you're so good to me. So, I mean, in terms of establishing a pattern of emotional dependence, I don't think this really does that, but it does show that clearly they were not only more than friends, but more than casual, like, sexual hookup partners, role players, whatever the fuck. Then it goes into the next section. Thor also expects the same dedication from Lyric, conveying his emotional dependence on them. Thor says, of course, thanks, babe. Lyric says, my pleasure. Thor says, Mar. I'm not reading this, okay? You can say Mar, ooh, I'm good. Okay, I don't know what the Gunnar is for, but, you know. Lyric says, hey, Thor, how are you doing? Thor says, not great. Surrounded by people, how are you? Lyric says, hugs you gently. Thor says, missed you today. Once again, not friendship talk. Then, going all the way to September 30th, I don't know why. I'm curious what's in between those DMs, or if that was the last DM that was sent. Thor says, been wonky lately. Lyric says, aw, sleepy Thor, wonky? You're finally getting to bed at a reasonable hour? The face. Even so, I hope you're not feeling too bad. Do you feel ill? And Thor says, nah, not ill, just missing you and hoping you miss me. So the statement, Thor also expects the same dedication from Lyric, conveying his emotional dependence on them. I don't really see that here. I definitely see that he is, like, divulging, my feelings, you know, he's definitely leaning on them for emotional support to a certain extent, I guess, but I don't think this establishes, like, a pattern of emotional dependence, right? But then there's a section, unconditional support. Thor would show unconditional support for Lyric. This is a very weird statement for a 31-year-old to make to a 20-year-old. And Thor says, can't see why anyone would break up with you, to be honest. Interesting. He's a simpin. But I will say, I mean, with like less than a 10-year age gap, if you're 21, you're old enough to drink, sign a contract, join the military, fucking, you know, over the age of consent. I don't think playing on this age angle is like, I mean, maybe it's good optics for some people. I think it's dumb as fuck. Then we got pet names. Thor would use pet names to establish a sense of intimacy and attachment. He would also use them to praise Lyric's submission. That's going to be an interesting section, but I will say that the babe thing is definitely pet name relationship shit. I've never called someone I'm not in a relationship with babe. So training submission. Thor would often compliment Lyric for submission and reward them with praise for agreeing with them. Definitely narcissist behavior, but we'll see if these screenshots actually establish that pattern. Thor says, sounds to me like you like the idea of being a submissive pet. Okay, we're getting kinky. That's fine. I mean, whatever, right? If that's what you're into, both of you. Lyric puts a face, only sometimes another face. Wow, we're really facing it up today. Thor, reading intimate text messages is always going to be cringe, no matter what the context is. Thor says, sleeps on the floor, wants a collar, loves my bone. I mean, I understand, furry, little pet wolf, he says. Lyric says, I really want to be yours forever. Obviously, continuing this type of dialogue when this person's saying, I really want to be yours forever, obviously establishes that you are either willfully ignoring or setting up for some sort of relationship. But I mean, honestly, this just looks like sex talk. I don't see the problem here. And that was on August 30th, 2018. And then on September 2nd, 2018, Thor says, you're fine, always a shy doggo. Then we jump all the way to October 1st, 2018. Sometimes it feels like you're interested in being a pet more than a partner. Is that the case? Lyric says, what? No, not really. Now, when you're asking questions like this, I mean, clearly he's inquiring on what kind, like if they would want to be a partner. I mean, obviously you're pushing for a relationship here, right? Given the context, given all the language. So in light of that, I kind of want to go over his response tweet, just a little bit of it here, and we're definitely going to go through all of it at the end. But him claiming in this tweet, you were a massive donator to our game in the very beginning and tried to use that to get close to both Riverbanks and myself. It worked and we were good friends for a bit there. When you were in the sphere of friendship, you tried to push that to something sexual and I turned you down. Assuming these messages are from him and they're real, that is just a bold-faced, complete lie. We were in the sphere of friendship, you tried to push that to something sexual and I turned you down. Clearly in these messages, he is engaging sexually, talking about relationship stuff, calling them babe, he's clearly lying. And that's why I wanted to be careful when I'm reviewing this, because you have to be careful about things that confirm your bias, right? It's very convenient that these logs exist and these doing this, but it does follow the pattern of behavior. So that's why I am inclined to believe it. So obviously, I need to stay more skeptical in this scenario because this is classic pirate software. He has been shown he's willing to straight up just lie. The classic 3, right? It's out of context. I already solved this years ago. This person is lying. Then building up a cult-like community, from Second Life to Twitch now to YouTube Shorts. He's like building up this audience to reinforce these lies such that a community note gets posted under the tweet that essentially says the big 3 talking points. Then on October 10th, Thor says, devoted wolf. Lyric says, nod, 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 I'm yours, ooh, woo. Thor says, you really want to be mine no matter what, huh? Lyric says, well, not no matter what, with a ... at the beginning. Mega giga cringe. But I mean, obviously, I don't have to keep pointing out the fact that this is relationship shit. Then our last section is meeting up. Thor really looked forward to meeting Lyric, expressing his excitement and even counting down the days until they meet. Thor says, I'm going to have a lot of fun with you at TwitchCon. Oh my god. Lyric says, face cuddling is also on my list if we have time for that. Thor says, I call Big Spoon. Lyric says, oh, okay. Oh, how unfortunate it would be if some innocent cuddles turned into something more. Thor says, super wanty. Oh my fucking god. October 9th, Thor says 15 days. October 20th, Thor says 5 days. Obviously, they were planning on meeting up at TwitchCon and fucking. I think that's pretty obvious here. So that is section 1 for love bombing. And I mean, does this follow a pattern of behavior of love bombing? I'm going to go ahead and say no. But it is pretty obvious that they were both planning to meet and fuck. He was obviously having like relationship talk with this person. And that is directly contradicted with the tweet that he made. And the tweet that he made, and we're going to go ahead and read that now, doesn't even address the screenshots, which this site was up before he made his response tweet. So the fact that he makes like very specific claims of like, we were never sexual, I turned you down, and then refuses to address the screenshots at all is very... I mean, it's classic pirate software. It's very suspicious, right? Completely dodging the point, dodging the evidence, and then just addressing small parts of what, you pick and choose, and then crafting a narrative around that. That's very classic pirate software. So it reads, After 5 years, you've come back around to pushing this LARP again because I'm a big creator now. It didn't work in 2020 because everyone called you on your shit, and it's not going to work now. So just to be clear, just because you have an audience of people that believe you and defend you, that doesn't mean that the accusations are not true. And this flippant, I've addressed this forever ago, it's suddenly not a problem now, no one needs to review it, don't look at it, it's so old. That's just a classic pirate tactic. That means nothing. Could be old, could have been ignored, could be legitimate, all at the same time. Then he says, you were a massive donator to our game in the very beginning, and I tried to use that to get close to both River Makes and myself. It worked, and we were good friends for a bit there when you were in the sphere of friendship, but you tried to push that to something sexual, and I turned you down. So clearly that statement is false, because we see the logs. Assuming the logs are real, and if the logs aren't real, why did he not make any attempts to address the logs and say that they're fake? Outside of one little hyper-specific mention that we'll get to. And then he says, after that, you went after Shay and made her so uncomfortable that she panics when thinking about that convention center to this day and doesn't want to go to conventions anymore. Then you charged back all of your donations and tried to cripple our studio. So it would be nice if you had evidence for either of these claims. No conversations with Shay were posted, no chargeback screenshots were posted, and even if this did happen, even if he did charge back all the donations, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. If Pirate Software basically led this person on, fucked them, and then, fucked off. But, I guess we'll see if he posts any evidence of that. Pirate says, your own boyfriend at the time warned us with how toxic and dangerous you were. Dude wasn't wrong. You spent the last 4 months working on this hit piece website and shown on your GitHub in the last 5 years trying to form the perfect argument to take me down. Now, clearly, if he's seen the website, he's seen the GitHub, clearly he knows there's screenshots there, he's still not addressing them. Pirate then says, before that, you edited our logs and made up some weird hypersexual cartoon of who I am. Hell, your own website has you talking in third person and typing as if you're speaking from my perspective all over it. This shit is unhinged and pathetic. The third person perspective is cringe, but you could have had someone else help them write it, and I think that's a nitpicking nothing point. He said before that you edited our logs, so he is claiming that some of them are edited. He's not really, that's such a vague, non-specific point, right? It doesn't really address how many of the logs are fake. What do you mean edited the logs? Did they edit their messages? Did they edit your messages? Are you claiming all the logs are fake? There's very little to go off there. So it just makes it fucking sus. Thor says, you're a fucking parasitic piece of shit and you need to leave us the fuck alone. See you in 2030 when you inevitably try this shit again. So that's probably the most hostile I've ever seen Thor, to be honest with you. But break it down. You need to make, he needs to make a video on this. He needs to go point by point. He needs to show what logs were fake. This is just not an acceptable response for someone who's supposedly innocent. But don't worry, my friends, it gets a lot juicier. This is part 1, Lust, and the next part, well, I guess you'll have to see.
I want one thing and that's you. Problem is to get you is the hardest thing I'll ever do. I need mad, and that's cool. Trying to make this money so that we can get together fully. You know the deal, baby, hop up in the back. I'ma lay you right down, we gon' have to do it fast now.